right, so really cool. We got Christopher Smith. People who like me, I think I'm your friend. I call you Smitty. Everybody, it's just what we call you. And so, thank you for joining us. And you're currently in a place where you get a lot of sun down there in Mexico. My favorite question to ask always, Christopher, is how'd you get into the game? Who brought it to you? Where did you find it? How did that work?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that for a while. So thanks for asking. Thanks for having me, by the way. I'm looking forward to sharing whatever I can to help others. It's kind of what I've done for most of my career. I started playing. My parents did not play. I guess they were smart. I had a 5th grade basketball coach who I've kind of lost touch with. His name was Bruce Alexander, and he was a big golfer. And one day he asked me, he said, I'm going to go play golf at the illustrious, which is where I grew up playing, Laurelwood International in Eugene, Oregon, which still is. It's a public 9-hole golf course. It looks like Augusta National now compared to when I grew up playing it.
Only great golf courses have trams that take you down to the range.
They took the tram out though. I think people are getting drunk and falling off it or climbing on top of it.
It was an amusement ride back in the day for college students.
It was. Yeah. Anyway, so I went out and just watched him play. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I'd like to get into this. And so he helped me a lot. And, I got some clubs. And then I started when I was 10. And then all through, high school, I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, Tracktown, USA. That was my home course. I had a monthly pass in the summer that was like $30 unlimited. And my parents would just dump me off at the golf course, in the morning and pick me up at night, whatever. And I'd spend all day out there. And the driving range was always kind of, it's so funny because I look back on it and we used to make fun of it because it was super hilly. As some people know, it was a beautiful 18-hole private golf course at one point.
I did not know that.
I'm thinking I'd have to look up for sure because I remember seeing all these old photos and I was like, wow, this is cool. Anyway, the city bought it. The city of Eugene bought it, I want to say late 60s. And they chopped it up and turned it into this funky 9-hole hilly. It was always wet. There was weeds out there in the summer. So it's, people call me Smitty or other. We always the nickname for Laurelwood was always the weed because there was weeds all over. It was awful. But in hindsight, because it was kind of in rough shape and hilly, and the greens were always running at a 4, but you were standing on the side of a mountain, that's where I learned how to play, and because the driving range and practice facilities, actually the main putting green's still there. I go up there when I'm back in Eugene in the summer, so I played a lot. I was on the course a lot, which I think is really important for training and learning. Maybe we do too much on the range, but anyway, so that's how I got started. And then played in high school in South Eugene. We were still the Axemen at that time, believe it or not.
A lot of great golfers come out of South Eugene.
Yeah. So my good friend Casey Martin, I've got him by about a decade. Yeah. So that was my start, and it just kind of hooked me. And I got into running and whatnot. I like team sports, but I also like sports where I didn't necessarily need anybody to go and do it. And the great thing about golf is your adversaries really are yourself and the golf course. So
I love Laurelwood. There's one small connection. And when I went to University of Oregon, where I met my wife, and I went there for architecture originally. And I didn't have enough money to go play golf when I was in school. I would go up to Laurelwood on a crummy weekday when nobody was out there, and I would basically turn that practice area into like my own little 40-yard 9-hole golf course. And my short game got really good. I probably should go spend a lot more time there now because I've forgotten how to score since then. But like that, I would just go up there with like a pair of rain pants and a sweatshirt.
There you go.
And nobody else was up there because it was miserable, but I would spend an hour and a half just because I had to get off campus.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my memory. I've never actually played it though. That's the funny part.
Interesting. It's, it's 9 holes. It's funky. There's 3 threes. And then our buddy Dan Hickson went in and redesigned a couple of the last holes. And then Will Benson now, who's a superintendent, who's fantastic. He kind of manages the whole thing now. And it's like, again, it does. I tell people this looks like Augusta National compared to when I was growing up playing. It's beautiful. He does a great job with it. It's all very eco, the fertilizers and whatnot he uses. And it rocks because it's 9 holes. It's affordable. It's kind of in town. And then they've turned the whole clubhouse. Upstairs is a great pub and whatnot. It's a good place to go have a beer and food.
Actually, I've heard about Will's thing he does when instead of using traditional fertilizer, he kind of makes teas, like giant tea bags and sprays where they're even a insecticide, but it's a natural insecticide. And it's like the way Debbie King described to me, it's like he makes these massive tea bags that he drops in there and they steep to make whatever it is that's going to hinder. So yeah, that's a great story. So you did keep in touch with Bruce for a while just because he was that kind of a person?
Yeah, he's still around, I'm sure. He kind of lived down the street from me too when I was growing up in Eugene. So yeah, he got me started. My parents weren't golfers, so I started there, and then the rest. And now I'm sitting here. Now I'm sitting in Mexico where I spend my winters. I'm in the Cabo area. I'm closer to San Jose, and I've been down here on and off for the last 5 years. So it gets me out of the lovely Northwest in the wintry months
when it's at its best. When I met you, you were still at Pumpkin Ridge. How did that work? How did you go from being, high school kid who was kind of half track, half golf to then how did you get into competitive stuff?
Got out of high school. I actually did graduate from high school. I can't believe I did that. And then I went to UC Santa Barbara on a golf scholarship where I played golf and drank beer for 2 years, basically. Rarely went to class. Took a couple years off.
They have one of the coolest nicknames for their mascot. What is it again?
Gauchos are great. Yeah.
Gauchos is pretty good.
Of course, we know what a gaucho is down here in Mexico, but most people don't. It's a cowboy. We actually need gauchos down here because we have an interesting hazard on the golf course down here. They're called cows. So these are wandering herds of cows that just show up occasionally. Not good for the golf course, especially the greens, because they're rather heavy. Anyway, so UCSB took some time off after that, and then kind of got into my first job in the golf business was with the great Lee Harlow, who I still keep in touch with, at a Levis Park golf course in Ventura, California. That was in 1980, 88, 89. And so I share this story because I still remember the number when we go into facilities, and because I've been there, that are busy, and people say, oh my gosh, it's nonstop traffic. And I said, well, how many rounds of golf a year does your facility do? People say, oh, we do 40,000, 50. So 1988, 1999, a Levis Park golf course, 18 holes, public, right? And we'd get people that would drive up from LA because they couldn't find a tee time. 90,000 rounds of golf a year. So this place was a factory. And, I was working in the golf shop and checking people in and calling people to the tee. What a great experience. And then I taught a little bit there. And then in 1990, I jumped over to France and speaking the language, and I taught full-time. It was kind of the beginning of my full-time teaching and coaching career. I was in Biarritz, France, which is in the southwest corner.
Wow. I've never heard about this part of your life.
Wow, there you go. Well, there's a lot of things you don't want to hear about. This might be one, but we'll find out. And I worked for the Stratton American Golf School. So the Stratton Golf School, I believe it's still there. It's in Stratton Mountain, Vermont. It was run by Keith Lyford. Still a dear friend of mine, great player, great teacher. I think he's still in the Tahoe area. Anyway, so it was a great fit for me because I was bilingual, and I worked there from 90 to 93. We did golf schools. We did 6-day golf schools.
Wow, that's commitment to a student.
People were mostly tapped out after 2 or 3 days. But anyway, that was the offering.
So since you bring up Keith Lyford, I would say my interaction with Keith being in Northern California, and he was in the Tahoe area. I think he was actually at the Tahoe Mountain Club in the Old Greenwood area at the time. And this is probably like 14, 15, 16 years ago. He was one of the first people that I knew who started to say there's more than 5 ball flight laws. He was the one who basically started. I mean, I'm sure there were others, but he was the one who was probably talking with you and some other people where it was like, no, there's at least one more. And it was actually really fun to talk to. Very, very unassuming, down to earth guy.
I am still part of, I think, the PGA adjunct faculty with the PGA of America in education. I don't do as much anymore ever since things moved to Frisco. And Keith came on board. And to your point, very unassuming, very smart, very good player. We talked a lot about adding, to the ball flight laws, which does happen at impact, dynamic loft. Like, okay, you can have the other 5 ball flight laws. And if anybody's interested, like I hope people do this. I always work backwards from those laws. So if somebody comes to me and they're having issues, I always want to identify which of those laws, sometimes there's more than one and they're all interrelated, they are violating, so to speak, so that their golf ball's not doing what they want. And dynamic loft, I just had a guy yesterday that had a lot of speed and he added a lot of loft at impact. He's 5 handicap, a pretty good player, but obviously kind of hit it higher and then he bottom out too soon, blah, blah, blah. So,
and when he missed, it would go left.
Usually left, but, and we put it on high-speed video and so he could see it because again, so much of this stuff we don't realize we're doing. Keith was adamant about, and I don't know if it's been added or not, doesn't really matter, but it is important. Dynamic loft, which kind of goes with, angle of attack. Everything's interrelated. So good man. I hope he's well. I haven't spoken to him for a couple of years, but
I love what you just said. So if you don't mind, I actually think I think people really respect you as a teacher. I know I'm one of many. Again, what was something that you use those ball flight laws again? I think that's really interesting. So, can you delve into that process? Because I think there's going to be people who are going to be like, I aspire to be like you.
Oh, I hope not. They need different aspirations, maybe. So with all the biases and preferences and theories and hypotheses out there, we have these things called laws. Boom. Like the law of gravity. Okay. So these are things you can't argue with. They're not somebody's opinion. We all have our opinions and preferences. These are the ball flight laws. These dictate where your golf ball goes and why it goes there. You cannot, or I always tell people, you want to argue with physics and geometry? You go ahead, but you're going to lose the argument. Okay.
Yeah, they're actually natural laws. Like the sun comes up a certain time where you want on the earth and it goes down a certain time. It's a natural law.
I borrowed this from P and Lynn, but I'm always trying to empower my students to self-coach. So when they hit a shot, once they understand or maybe can picture the ball flight laws, because you can't see impact, I'll ask them, which of the ball flight laws wasn't quite spot on? Was it face? Was it path? Was it angle of attack? Was it centerness? Was it speed? Okay. Was it dynamic loft? So that they hit a shot and they can start to say, oh, I missed the sweet spot with centerness, or why did the ball start right or left? Right. It's not my opinion. So it's a law. So I think it's important, and however we can, and some people get this way more than others. I mean, I'll explain share the ball flight lots with some people, and I get a full on deer in the headlights look. They got no idea what I'm talking about. Okay. So then it's my job to help them at least better understand it. So when they hit a shot and the ball does X, they can say, well, it was a path issue, or it was an angle of attack, or a low point issue. Right. So I think we need to work back from that, because at the end of the day, on my new business cards, Monte, which you will love, I have what I do for a living really is I'm a golf ball behavior specialist. People come to me because their golf ball is not behaving. It's not doing what they want it to do. It could be on a 3-foot putt. It could be on a 300-yard drive. So I have to figure out why. Okay, why it's not behaving. What are they doing to make it not behave? Because they want it to behave better, right? And that gets into, when it behaves better, they have more fun, okay? And they play better, right? So I think most people want that. I had this conversation. I have this all the time. Oh, I want to get better, but I want to have fun. So hold on a second. Getting better, the process is usually not fun. Playing better is fun. Like, I'm in a better mood and I'm in better spirits when I go out and play well, and I can get pissy and pouty when I don't. So I want people to play better so they can have more fun. But the process, and I think this has been sold the wrong way. The process is not always fun. As you and I have talked, what hard work is? It's hard. Okay. So, sure, there are little tips and tricks that we can throw out that might help, but at the end of the day, it is a process.
I think it's funny you say that. Actually, after COVID, I actually think that one of the things that I espouse is the idea that Christopher Smith actually doesn't play golf. He walks his ball. In your case, sometimes runs his ball.
Yeah.
Like it's a ball. And what's the name of your ball? I call him Titleist 4. And I put little dots on him so nobody confuses him from their ball. And so I don't play on a country club, or I don't play on a golf course. I play on a golf ball walking park. When I'm walking my ball, and I needed to behave. So like I send it to me and my ball. We go to see Dr. Smith so he can help me train my ball.
Well, so you and I played a couple of years ago up in Seattle, and I had a largely misbehaving golf ball that day. It was terrible. I was hitting giant slices all day, so it was misbehaving. It was awful, and I fiddled around trying to fix it. You helped me a little bit, but that was a good example of a misbehaving golf ball. Which then, okay, so what's the process? And this is what it needs to be. You have to do an analysis or a diagnosis. Why is my golf ball not behaving? Which of the ball flight laws is not quite spot on? Okay, that's the first part. And you have to, and I'll mention this if we want to go there. You have to, and this is exactly why I did some recent posts on social media where I identified some groups of individuals on social media that I believe are doing a disservice not only to the industry, okay, in the profession of teaching and coaching, but to the people they're trying to help. So you have to bring it to the students' attention and their awareness. Hey, you're doing this. Oh, wow, I had no idea I was doing that. Okay, and I'm getting there with my chain here. I have not lost the plot. Okay, then you have to provide solutions, remedies, fixes, cures. Hey, you want your golf ball to behave differently. I, as an expert, I've made the diagnosis. I think that's kind of the easy part. Then the challenging part is, how do we make the modifications? What are the solutions? Okay, what are the fixes? So that your golf ball will behave better. So in this example that I'm referencing, what do we need to do in the industry, whether it's online or elsewhere, to improve the overall quality and professionalism of my business? And I'm touchy about it because I've now, dedicated 35 years of my life to the art and craft of instruction, teaching, and coaching. And so to see it ridiculed and decimated in so many ways with some of the things going on out there that people are just doing for entertainment, I got it, but I'll go to a movie or a concert, okay? And to make money, is disconcerting. And if people want entertainment, fine. But if they want to get better at golf, they need to choose a different path, and they need to have some options. Okay, what are the better paths? Who are the great teachers? Who are the rock stars out there? Or what are just some things I need to do more as a student, okay, or more as a teacher to follow that process I just mentioned: analysis, diagnosis, okay, and then some remedies and some fixes and some cures and some solutions.
Yeah, I would say too, one of the things I was thinking as you were talking about dynamic loft, I know several times in my own life, and I've seen it happen many times. That's where, again, club fitting, we talk about Nipper, Michael. Yeah. You can have somebody who has makes all the right things, but the golf shaft does not match up on their driver so now the deflection or shaft droop causes that dynamic loft, and they literally make a golf swing and they pound it on a certain hole, and they expect it to be 4 yards right of target line, and then 1 yard back to the middle, and then be just right down the middle, and it's 40 yards left. And the reason why is it sometimes is not, it's dynamic loft affects face. And so, it's just an interesting scenario.
I'd love to address that quickly. I couldn't agree more. The tool, remember, us as human beings, we are master compensators, and we are designed to solve problems. So the problem in golf is my ball is here and I want it to go there. So if you give someone a misfit club, any aspect of that club, they will eventually on their own figure out how to make it work. But it might be a very dysfunctional pattern, swing, inefficient, ineffective. Okay. So whereas if you give them a tool, so we've talked about Nipper, my dear friend Mike Taylor, Artisan Golf, who's, I believe, the finest crafter and grinder of wedges in the world. He calls them the hammers. If he gives you a hammer, aka a wedge, that does not fit you, your system subconsciously will figure out how to use it. And how you're using it may not be very efficient. It might be doing something that breaks one of the ball flight laws. So it's critical that the tool, the golf club, fits you and what you're doing. Otherwise, you will make compensations that may not serve you long term. I'm fiddling around with putters right now. A big shout out to my dear friend Bruce Rarick, who is one of the best putting coaches in the world, who's helped me a lot over the last year and a half. So I was with him in Phoenix a couple months ago. I had 3 different putters that I was kind of futzing with, completely different putters. Okay, and I said, "Hey Bruce, just watch me hit one putt with each putter from 10-footer. Watch me down the line." And just like that, because he has great pattern recognition. Okay, he said, "Putter A, your putting stroke is better, okay, more efficient, okay, more functional with putter A." And the putters were kind of all over the map. And I've had success somewhat with all of them. So I do think it's important. And I think it's funny too, Monty, as you know, especially beginners, is, "Oh, I'm not good enough to get fit for clubs." I disagree 1,000%. Okay, the newbies really need all the help they can get. A good player, you and I could take something that's kind of fit and give us 3 swings, and we'd kind of figure it out. Okay, but under the gun, maybe not so much. So the best in the world are making dang sure that their equipment is dialed in. And I think for beginners, I see these people that are learning how to play, and it's like, where'd you get those clubs? Are they like, Uncle Joe's clubs from 1850? You need some help to help build that more functional motion.
There's people I see who show up with a set of clubs, and there are 1989. But in some cases, a blade for somebody who's new may actually be more with someone like you. If they actually are going to spend time with you as a coach, they probably might be fine if they're a decent athlete, because the blade actually will give them more feedback on the ball flight laws, and you can quickly bend the lie to figure out how to set that club up so that they actually can not have to make those compensations. Yeah. So in some ways, to me, that could be one of the best things,
It could be a training aid. Again, just to share a recent story, Victoria Gailey, who's a Tigard Portland native, maybe the greatest female player in the history of Nevada, Reno, now playing tours. I've helped her on and off she's 25 now. Anyway, she came down and her putting is fine. But we did this little test with the putter she's using. We just put some of that Pels, plus, R.I.P. Dave Pels, tape on her putter face, and I had her putt for a few minutes. This is an elite player. She's a +4. She's catching up to Scotty Scheffler. Anyway, her marks were all over the face. And she knows it's always tough love. And I said, for a +4, that's awful. That's terrible. Okay. So we're in the process right now. I want her to find a super unforgiving putter to train with, where, if you hit it off center, the ball goes, sideways. So, and get it kind of the same specs as the putter you're using. So when we train, and I've talked about this for years in my Train to Trust program, golf is one of the few sports when people practice and train, the training and practice is easier than the actual game. That is all backwards. Okay, so I could cite case after case of Olympic track and field athletes that I know and I've spent time with. Their training and practice is always way harder than the race. Bobby Knight's name came up recently when Indiana won the national championship, right? They went 16-0, the football team did. And this is a big blast from the past, but Bobby Knight's 1976 Indiana basketball team went 32-0, right? They ran the table. Scott May, Kent Benson, Quinn Buckland had great players, but those guys always said they couldn't wait for the games to start because the practices were so hard. Knight just killed him. He killed him in the practice, and the game started like, wow, this is... So one of the things, and there's a time and a place for everything, at times we need to make people's practice harder. And there's a tipping point. There's a challenge point, if you will, so that when they go to play, it seems a little easier. And that's kind of what happened to me a little bit with my endeavors in speed golf, where I was running around with 6 clubs. And then all of a sudden you gave me 14, okay, and a lower heart rate and a rangefinder. I was like, shit, this is easy. That goes into a little bit. I think people could integrate that into their practice and that into their teaching and coaching. Like Victoria, when she was a kid and she always embraced it, I'd throw her in a greenside bunker and I'd say, all right, here's an 8-iron, hit it out. Here's a 5-iron, hit it out. Okay, so then when I gave her the wedge, or she's got a wedge under the gun, it's like, this is gravy.
I was thinking, actually, when you were talking about the golf ball behavior, why is the range easier? Because it's not my ball that I'm trying to make behave. It's the horse's ball, and it's yellow. I don't have to go find it. It truly cannot. So in some ways, the old school Rose City practice pitch park thing, or you hit your wedges out of the shag bag, and then you got to go find them. Like that's probably a better practice method in some ways.
It is in some ways. So the quality goes up when you do that. I just had a guy the other day who he's got some back shoulder stuff, and he goes, I'm on kind of a pitch count right now. I can only hit so many balls until things start to hurt. And I said, that's a bit of a blessing. So every ball becomes very precious and very important. Now, what does that look like when you play golf? Okay. And this is all backed in scientific theories, okay, and facts, if you will, is we know the more you make your practice look, smell, taste like what's actually going to happen in any field or endeavor, the more it transfers. Okay. So if your practice became very high quality and boy, I gotta go pick this ball up afterwards. Okay. That looks a lot more like a competitive round of golf than the traditional modern day driving range where you're just